Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Using Research to Grow Your Business. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you really know about market research? My name is Marnie Nesher, President of the Business Journal News Network. This webinar is presented by the Business Journal News Network and Research and Marketing Strategies, otherwise called RMS. Quick item before we begin the webinar. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box on your right side of your computer screen at any time, and our presenters will gladly answer them at the end. Please let me introduce our two presenters today. Vance Marriner is the Research Director here at the Business Journal News Network. He has over 25 years of experience in marketing and market research, working as an analyst at in-house marketing departments, as well as an independent research firm. In his current role at BJNN, he directs all research efforts, including digital marketing analytics, compiling the weekly list for the Central New York Business Journal publication, and developing the annual book of lists. For the past 6 years, he has also been an adjunct instructor of marketing and management at the SUNY Oswego School of Business. Our second presenter is Sandy Baker, who has more than 30 years of marketing experience, including sales, communications, public speaking, strategic planning, government relations, business development, and community outreach. She is a past Onondaga County legislator and is currently the VP of Corporate Development for RMS. She focuses on identifying new business opportunities, cultivating existing client relationships, and building RMS awareness and strategies. Sandy, before we begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about RMS?
Well, sure, and thank you. I'm very excited about today. We are a full-service market research firm. We're located in Baldwinville, a beautiful village right across from the Beeville Diner. We've been in business since 2002. We do a wide variety of market research. We have a full-service focus group facility, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We have a full-service call center, a whole analytic team. We do a lot in healthcare, banking and finance, nonprofit organizations, education, basically anybody who is looking for some market research. And our clients are across the country. I just said we had a client call from Jamaica yesterday, but we really love when we get to work local, and we love our partnership with you as well.
Well, thank you. So now let me turn the presentation over to Vance. It's early, to Vance Marriner.
Thank you, Marnie. So today we're going to be talking about a wide range of market research activities, both some things that you can do on your own and some things that you might, some projects that you might need some help with from a market research firm. But I'm going to start out by talking to you about some free or low-cost resources that you can do in-house. And these are we'll be talking about what we call primary and secondary research, and I'm going to be talking mostly about what we call secondary research, which is research where somebody else has already conducted the data collection for you. So that's always good. And these are resources that you might use if you are involved in, say, strategic planning and you want to get some data about the environment that you're operating in, what's sometimes called environmental scanning. These are resources that you might use if you're in the early stages of exploring possibilities for a new business or a new product, just getting some background information about that. Or maybe you want to know more about the competition in your industry or the competitive environment that you face. So again, the focus here will be, these are all sort of free or low-cost resources that you can use in-house. So to start with, one of the resources that you can use if you want to know about different industry sectors that are out there. Some great resources are the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is the federal entity, and also here in New York State, the New York State Department of Labor. And those sites, you can get a lot of in-depth data about different industry sectors in a given area, how many people are working in them, the different jobs that exist within those sectors, the wages that people in those sectors are paid. And so that's a really good way to get a feel for how big is an industry in a given area. And the two sites, the BLS site and the New York site, they're very similar in the data they present. The main difference is that the federal site, the Bureau of Labor Statistics site, gives you information on, say an MSA level or state level, where New York has specifically defined regions. So if you're interested in, say, Central New York or the North Country or the Southern Tier, they have tailored geographies to that. For those of you here in Central New York, another great resource where you can get information about industries and actually some predictions about how things are going to go in the coming year is the Center State CEO Economic Forecast Report that comes out every year. And I should mention that RMS is a major contributor to that report. They do the data collection. They talk to industry leaders and a variety of sectors here in the region and get their ideas about how things went last year and where they think they're going in the coming year in the sector. And that report, it's a great resource. It's available for free at the Center State CEO website that I have linked here in the slide. Another really valuable resource that has a wealth of information about demographics and across a wide variety of geographies is the U.S. Census Bureau American Fact Finder site. And so if you're looking to get information about things like population, households, average income, the ethnic composition of an area, this Fact Finder website is really invaluable. You can go in there and select the geography you want. Maybe you want to find information on a zip code level, a county level, and so forth. You can put that in and pick the report that you want. A couple things that I should mention with the Fact Finder site is that using census data, not all information is available at all levels of geography. So there might be some information, for example, that's only available at the county level or as opposed to the zip code level. Some of it will depend on how recent you want the information. Sometimes it takes a while for them to get information at the finer geographies, because they're always adding information. And so there's actually a lot of reports that are available, and it can actually be a little bit overwhelming. But usually if you go on there and if you're looking for something pretty basic, it's pretty easy to find. But you can get into some pretty detailed reports if you are patient enough to poke around. And again, so the link to the Fact Finder site is right here on the slide. Another resource that I should mention, this is actually a collection of resources, is there are a lot of free market research resources available right at the public library. Here in Onondaga County, the library system here offers a wealth of resources. All you need to do is be a card holder, which is free. And in most cases, most of these resources that I'm about to talk to, you can access right through the library website. So in most cases, you won't even need to go to the library itself. So a few things in the Onondaga County Library collection that are available, that are of use to researchers. They have a database called Reference USA, and that is a database of 25 million US and Canadian businesses. And they also have 89 million US residences. So that would be a valuable resource for both business to business and business to consumer marketing. You can compile lists of leads or competitors, and you can select those by address, industry, NAICS code, employee size, or a lot of other different variables. So that is a good way to get a quick list of companies in a given area. Of course, the library has newspaper databases, and newspaper archives are a great way to find information. If you're looking for info about a specific company or a specific industry that is prevalent in a certain area, oftentimes the major employers, the major businesses in a given area will be written about a lot in newspapers, and so you can search databases in most cases go way back a number of years to get some historical data. The library also has a suite of tools called Business Insights, and that will give you access to trade journal articles, industry overviews, market share data, and even SWOT analyses for various companies. So you can get some good in-depth information about a company and a good source of competitive information. And then finally, a great resource that the library has. This isn't a market research resource per se, but it's an e-learning tool called lynda.com, and this is something that you could subscribe to on your own and pay for, but you can access it for free through the library. And again, lynda.com is an e-learning site, and they have online courses available about just a really wide variety of topics. You can learn software, things like that, but they do have quite a few market research specific courses on there, things like how to write a survey or statistical analysis, or just market research analysis in general. And so the courses will range anywhere from typically an hour to 4 or 5 hours, and it's a great way if you're looking to do some research on your own and do some analysis on your own. That's a great place to start to develop some of the tools that you'll need to proceed. Okay, so if you're looking for information about specific companies, I already talked about this a little bit, some resources that you can use. I mentioned Reference USA, the business database that's available through the library. News websites are a great place to start. If you're looking at a particular market, the main news website that's often maintained by the newspaper in that market, or the business journal in that market, is a great place. Typically, there's a fee to access their archives or to access back issues, but it's usually pretty nominal. If you're doing it just kind of on a per article basis, you won't be paying a lot of money for that. I also need to mention that in most medium to large size markets in the United States, there'll be a Book of Lists publication. Marnie mentioned that I'm involved in the Book of Lists that we have here in Central New York, but these are typically compilations from business journals across the country, and they in their market, they maintain lists of key industries in their market, and will list companies, organizations with information such as what industry they're part of, some contact information, a summary of their services, and who the key executives are. So that's a great resource. You can usually get the Book of Lists online for not a lot of money, and oftentimes you're able to buy individual lists. So if you're only interested in say 1 or 2 industries, oftentimes you're able to get an individual industry list for less than the cost of the entire Book of Lists. And then this is pretty obvious, but something that you shouldn't overlook if you're looking for info on a specific company is, go in and scour their websites and their social media platforms. There's great info available there. You can usually learn a lot. They'll tell you about what services they offer. Oftentimes they'll mention who their customers are. You can get oftentimes learn who the key players, the key executives are. So don't overlook that as a resource. Okay, so up to now I've been talking about secondary research, which again is research that somebody else has already done and compiled for you. Currently, there are some free survey tools that are available for do-it-yourself surveys that allow you to actually compile your own primary research. Again, primary research being research that you would collect on your own. And there are software programs like SurveyMonkey where they have a free membership option, and then there are survey tools and email programs like Constant Contact and MailChimp. And I have to say that I've used the Constant Contact tool. I've used SurveyMonkey, and they're useful in the right settings. But I do have to say that I recommend that you proceed with caution with those types of tools, particularly if you don't really have a lot of experience in market research or survey research, especially. The reason for that is that it's easy to send out a survey, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're sending out a survey that will yield meaningful results. One reason for that is that to compose a good survey, you really have to be experienced in crafting the questions. There's a real science to writing survey questions and to survey composition, knowing how to ask things, knowing how much to ask, even the order of the questions. So if that's something that you haven't done before, that might not be a productive avenue for you if you don't have any experience in survey research. Also, you have to be sure in survey research that you're surveying the right people in the right way. So you have to make sure that you have access to a representative sample of the target audience that you want to reach, and you need to be sure that you're reaching out to them the right way. So you might, for example, you might be tempted to survey people in Constant Contact because you have an email database, but an email survey might not be the best way to reach that particular audience. It might be, phone survey might be a better option. So again, if you're unsure, if you don't have a lot of experience in those areas, again, I urge you to proceed with caution before you jump into using those tools. And that leads me to my final point before I turn the discussion over to Sandy. Is I've talked about a lot of things that you can probably feel comfortable about doing in-house, but there'll come a time when you have to decide whether you want to do the project yourself or if it's time to think about bringing in an independent research firm. And there's some key questions that I think you should ask yourself. When in doubt, ask these questions, and I think that can help you decide how to proceed. One is just a simple question of, how much time and how many staff resources do you have available? Do you want to spend the time to administer a research project and analyze the data that comes in? So if you're short on time and you're short on resources, even if it's a relatively simple project, you still might want to get some outside help with that. How comfortable? The next question would be, how comfortable do you feel administering and analyzing this data? And that's largely a question of your background, your skill set, your comfort levels. Do you have that experience, or does someone in your organization have that experience? If the answer is yes, then by all means. But if that's not a skill area that people in your organization have, you might want to seek some outside help. Another issue, and I talked about this in the previous slide, is do you have access to a representative sample if you're doing survey research, or even if you're doing qualitative research like focus groups that Sandy will talk about shortly? Do you have access to the right pool of people and a way to recruit them to do the research? This is the next question. This is a really big one, and this is often a hard question to answer honestly, is can you really be objective? And, we all think that we can be objective about ourselves, but the truth is that, none of us can really be totally objective when we're talking about ourselves and our own organizations. And oftentimes in research, the objectivity is really one of the most important factors. You really need somebody who can collect data without any kind of biases, analyze that data without any kind of biases or preconceived ideas about where what you want to do or where it should go. And that leads to the next question: is oftentimes with a research project, there'll be various stakeholders, and what is their comfort level? Do they feel comfortable with an in-house analysis? You might have stakeholders from outside your organization who might they might trust third-party research more than something that you do in-house because of that objectivity issue. A pretty common scenario is sometimes you'll be doing research in order to secure funding for a new venture, and oftentimes a lender will require that you do third-party research as opposed to doing it yourself because of that issue. And then finally, one question that you should ask yourself before you rule out getting help from an outside firm is, a lot of times a big impediment to that is people assume that they don't have the budget for it. But, have you really explored all your options? Some firms will work with you to, scale down a project to be something that you can afford, or that it might just be less expensive than you assume. So you should really make sure that you've done your due diligence and done your homework on price and, sought out quotes from various firms before you rule out any possibilities. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Sandy, who is going to talk to you about some things, some benefits of working with an independent research firm and some of the types of projects that they can help you with.
Well, thanks, Vance, and what a great list. And I learned even some areas we're going to look at, but really after hearing all of that, you may be asking yourself, why would you use a professional market research firm? Well, if you want unbiased, confidential research with high response rates that are reliable and credible, and you want experienced professionals writing, conducting, and analyzing the data, and making some recommendations, and you really want to understand what all of it means, then you want to work with a professional. And professionals can help you determine what's the best type of research you need to help grow your business. So a professional firm can really become your back office. The first thing a market research firm should ask you is, what do you want to find out? And then the next thing is, what are you going to do with the results? There are so many ways you can conduct market research. So we're going to focus on a few of them today, but we said we could actually do a webinar on each one of these because there's so much. But we really wanted to keep it simple and give you enough to walk away with and feeling comfortable. We're also going to give you some great examples for each of these modalities. And each of them have their own strengths. So while we're going through it, be thinking about how you could use these to help your business. The key really is to determine the best for your organization and your goals. So when people think of market research, the first thing that they usually think of is surveys. And like Vance said, there's a science to writing a survey. And this is the most common type, and as you know, surveys are everywhere. A good survey will help keep you engaged. And I'm sure many of you have started one, and then you just get into it, and then you quit. And so working with us, we try to avoid that happening. And there is a science to writing a good survey. What questions to ask, how to ask them, what order to ask them. It's so important to know when to include open ends and closed ends. So a closed end is a yes or no or always or never answer. And an open end allows for a free response. And those can also be optional or forced, which means if you've ever tried to move forward and you didn't answer one of the questions, it was forced. You need to make sure that you use those very carefully. And be sure that the routing is correct. So depending on the response you get, the appropriate next question comes up. There's also a rating and scaling questions. The Likert scale is the most common one used. For example, when you registered, we asked you on a scale of 1 to 5 how knowledgeable you were with market research. So this let us know that most of you today are beginners to moderate users. We do have a few seasoned researchers out there, so welcome. And our favorite response was, enough to be dangerous. So we're here to make it as safe as possible out there in the market research world. You also need to be mindful of the total number of questions and the time it takes to complete the survey. So we recommend that the average online survey contain around 25 questions and takes around 5 minutes to complete. There's a lot of survey fatigue going on right now, so we only ask the questions that really need to be answered, and professionals do it in a way that isn't biased or leading. So using a format that keeps them engaged and interested with graphics, images, slides, and best practices to get accurate data. So recently there's been a resurgence in focus groups. So if you watch TV, you'll see a lot of the Chevy ads. They're featuring real people, not actors, showing focus groups to get feedback. But you don't have to be a national car brand to do focus groups. So this is our facility right in Baldwinsville. It's the only full-service facility in the area. We were just talking about this earlier, that Central New York is one of the top test markets in the country. So our rooms are very busy. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use some focus groups. But we have the focus group room with a cool one-way mirror. So the pictures in the top left and the bottom right, that's from the observation room. So that's where the clients sit and watch. And then on the top right and bottom left, those are the actual focus group room. It's rather neutral. Those are whiteboards so that the clients can come and we can make notes on there. There's monitors, so if we're watching commercials, they can see that as well. Focus groups are a great way to get real reactions and real responses from real people in real time. So we've worked with Toyota before they launch new commercials. We'll recruit people, they'll come, they'll watch the commercials, and they say what they like and what they don't like. We worked with Sesame Street. They were doing some new resources for veteran families. And we've even done beer tasting, and that was a real easy one to recruit for sure. Again, the first thing to determine when you're using focus groups is what do you want to find out and who do you want to hear from? So we will work with you to develop the criteria for the participants, and that's called the screener. And the whole idea is to recruit the right people. So this can be your customers, it could be potential customers, it could be competitors, it could be the community, really anybody that you want to hear from. We'll also write a moderator's guide. So this is vital to lead the groups. We don't just get people in and let them go and talk whatever. We really have some parameters of what we're focused in on. We also recommend using a participant packet. So that gives the participants an opportunity to write down their answers and thoughts. And then we collect those after to see their responses in case they didn't get a chance to share those thoughts. You need a professional moderator, somebody, again, who's non-biased and uses a lot of active listening. A good moderator gets everyone to participate and keeps the conversation moving. You want everyone to share, but you want to try to eliminate anybody really dominating. And the moderator will use the moderator guide, but they can probe to ask a little bit more. So if we were having a focus group and somebody said they went into the bank lobby and it was busy, a good moderator would say, well, was busy a good thing because there were a lot of people and there was a lot of activity, or was it a bad thing? It was loud and it took a long time. There's also usually an analyst in the viewing room with the clients to observe and take notes, and then they'll take all of those notes and prepare a full report. And this report will really give you the overall themes, recommendations, and information to help develop your marketing strategies. So a typical focus group is usually around 90 minutes, and the incentive is about $75. However, it's been as high as $500 depending on the market until we were recruiting. Focus groups are a relatively easy way to ease into market research. So if you're ever in the Baldwinsville area, please come and visit. I'd love to give you a tour if you haven't been there before. If you want more information than what you can get from a survey, IDIs are a good way to get deeper information. In-depth interviews are done one-on-one, either on the phone or in person. These can be done to learn more from your customers or your potential users. We would call and set up an appointment for the interview, and a trained interviewer uses, again, a very detailed script, but they probe, and it's really more like a conversation. We regularly conduct these for a company. It's an international healthcare organization, RTI. We recruit patients recently and caregivers that had memory loss, and they wanted to learn more about their interest about a potential new product. This is done on a regular basis on IDIs. We did a recent study with past donors to learn why they were no longer giving to a certain organization. It was very eye-opening to hear some of the reasons, and it really helped our client restructure some of their marketing, and it has since increased their contributions substantially. IDIs can range from 20 minutes to 60 minutes long, and an honorarium is offered to the participant, and this can range anywhere from $50 to $200. Sometimes when we're doing these, we also give them the option, if they're uncomfortable taking the honorarium, we can donate it to a charity or to a foundation. If you've ever been in the mall and been stopped and asked your opinion, well, first of all, next time, please say yes, because it could be us asking. Second, these are called INTERCEPT surveys, and they're used to capture perceptions, either pre or post the experience, or just to get general public opinion. So in the bottom photo, that's Bonnie Nelson. She is one of our interviewers, and she was in Minneapolis. We were doing a project for Mannington Floors, and we were doing these at, I think, 6 different locations across the country, basically getting information on style flooring, price points, and the designs. And you'll also see Burger King right now is doing a lot of commercials using INTERCEPT surveys. Again, we determine who you want to talk to and what you want to ask. We use trained interviewers to ask the questions, we analyze the results, and then we offer recommendations and next steps based on that data. These are usually just a few minutes long, and we offer an incentive to encourage participation. Mystery shops are a great way to see how things are really handled. And yes, we actually pay people to do a wide variety of mystery shops. They can measure service levels, they can monitor compliance, they establish benchmarking for follow-ups. They can also be conducted on your competitors to gain very valuable information. Each project is customized based on what you want to find out. We recently conducted mystery shops for a regional bank because they wanted to better understand how their branches were performing. So we created several scenarios, from making a deposit to asking about opening up a new account. We evaluated how clean the branch was, how they were greeted, how they were treated, how the experience was overall. We documented each encounter, and then we created a full report and highlighted where they were doing well and where they needed to improve a little bit. They're now putting service protocols in place, and then we'll do another round in the spring and measure their results. So this is really an area where you may benefit from using some mystery shops. Some organizations have us call their sales department and see how the sales process is handled, whether they're doing what they want them to correctly, and we can do that over the phone, and then we see naturally what is the follow-up. Is there an email that's sent? Do they contact us again to see about closing the sale? So using a professional for mystery shopping keeps this confidential and provides very reliable data. So that's just a few of the basic types of market research modalities that can be used. And research is really like a funnel. You want to start broad, and then you want to drill down. So to really grow your business, you need to know a few things first. And if you want to grow your customer base, you have to understand what's making your current customers happy. So you need to know your customers. And knowing your customers is a great place to start when you're looking at market research. If you understand their satisfaction, it will help you attract more customers. So asking your customers, what do they like? What don't they like? Why did they choose you? What would they change? What's important to them? How did they find you? Why do they give to your organization? Are they familiar with all of your products and services? And would they recommend you? These are all great ways to create a customer profile. And customer expectations are higher than ever. You'll hear terms like voice of the customer or customer experience in market research. If your customers aren't happy, they may or may not tell you, but they will tell everyone else. So ask yourself, when's the last time you conducted a customer survey? Do you really know what your customers are saying? When you do those, it does several things. One, it gives you feedback. It also tells your customers that you want to hear from them, that they're important. And it's also a way to do some direct marketing by asking them if they're familiar with their services. You're planting seeds about those services. Customer surveys measure satisfaction and their loyalty. In the banking world, they call that the Net Promoter Score. Onondaga County Water Authority, ACWA, they conduct customer satisfaction surveys every other year. And they do it by a telephone survey, and they call over 400 customers. Kinney Drugs, they're continually asking customer feedback through online quick pulse surveys. They do INTERCEPT surveys as well. And a national association we just worked with, they had us update their database to make sure that they had the most current and relevant contact information, as well as some data mining. You may have access and you may have a big database, but if you're not doing anything with it and understanding the demographics and understanding their giving habits and better understanding who your current members are, that's a great place to start to really look at ways to increase your business. Focus groups, IDIs, INTERCEPTs, these are also great ways to learn more about your customers. You can conduct these, certainly some of these on your own, but you're absolutely going to get more detailed, honest feedback when a third party conducts them. Research has shown that happy employees equals happy customers, which in turn means more business. So you may want to find out when was the last time your organization conducted an employee survey. We really see an increase in these as well right now. We manage the Best Places to Work program for the Central New York Business Journal, and last year it was a record number of entries. I think companies are really understanding the importance of knowing their employees, and going through the Best Places to Work program is a great way to do that. Not everybody who participates makes that list. So there's a standard that needs to be met to achieve that distinction of being a best place to work. Again, it's confidential though, and the companies get that data so they can in fact make some changes to increase their scores. When you conduct an employee survey, you're saying to your employees that they're important and that you want to hear from them, and that you're working with a professional firm. You're also saying that it is confidential and you want them to be open and honest. You just have to be prepared for the information that you might hear. While you can conduct your own employee surveys, again, you may not always generate a true picture of satisfaction and culture. There is a hesitancy for employees to be honest when they're worried about their answers being shared and knowing who they came from. Most employee surveys that we conduct are usually through emails. We have conducted IDIs with larger organizations who want more feedback from management. And we've done some focus groups also to engage your employees and also to share ideas on how they can increase business. And sometimes your employees are some of the best tools and the best way to capture some of that information. And of course, you want to know your potential customers. So this is one of our favorite case studies. There were two major lawn care companies, and they both wanted to grow. One used market research, and one used what they thought that their clients wanted, and both grew. But the one that used market research grew more than 17% more than the other company. So you might be asking why, or what did they do? Well, in doing market research, including doing some focus groups, they found out that more women were buying lawnmowers and more women were mowing the lawn. And finding out that was important for them because after doing some additional market research, they found out what women wanted in a lawnmower. So easier pull starts, smaller gas tanks, more comfortable seats and handles. These changes that were made a tremendous difference in their sales. So again, knowing who your potential customers are and what they want will help you succeed. You need to understand their key drivers to use your service, to donate to your organization, to buy your product. And a survey to potential customers can include some lead qualification questions to capture whether they would like to be contacted and then become a warm lead for you. And your sales team can use that information as well. Once you know who your potential customer is, then you can target your marketing and your message. Focus groups and surveys are a great way to start to find out more about this. INTERCEPT can also capture that information. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, you know how many times the shark asks the guest if they did any market research, and I love when they say that. We've actually done studies with some companies that have gone on to Shark Tank after testing their new product or service with us, just so that they really know the potential of what it is. But you don't have to be going on to Shark Tank to do a study if you're thinking about a new product or a new service. As a preferred partner with the Tech Garden, we're doing both primary and secondary research to understand their true market potential, especially with a lot of the new drone companies as well. Market research can allow for actual product or service testing. So, for example, we did a project with Fitbit. They asked us, they wanted to test the next version. So we recruited people to wear the Fitbit, to give some feedback. They got to keep the Fitbit, and Fitbit really got some great information in creating their next brand. Lipton tea, they were really seeing an increase in non-carbonated drinks. So we did some test tasting for flavored teas with them. A competitive assessment is vital to know who and what you are up against. Demographic trends and analysis, and this is going to provide insights into your potential market and understanding your price points. What will people pay? How much will it cost you? Are they really interested in it? Focus groups, surveys, IDIs, and INTERCEPTs are all great ways to know the potential and the feasibility of a new product and a new service. Knowing your image and awareness is vital to growth. So what is your brand? What do people think of when they think of you? Nike has Just Do It. Welcome to Moe's is their standard greeting if you ever go there. And if you're local and you order anything from Avalon Printing, you know you're going to get a bag of cookies. So what do people think when they hear of your organization name? Subway continues to take the pulse of the market to keep up with their fast-paced food industry. The market research they did found out that fresh, when saying fresh, no longer meant made to order. Customers now thought of it as non-GMO and organic or locally sourced ingredients. So they took their fresh campaign and changed that, and they created all new campaign that's been very successful for them. So do you want to know what your name stands for? You might want to know what your logo means when people see it, your advertising, your packaging. These can be tested through surveys, focus groups, or IDIs. Another way we do this is called a quick pulse on your brand, and we use panel testing. So at RMS, we have Viewpoint, and Viewpoint, or any panel, any market research panel, is basically made up of people that say, yes, if you're doing a study and I meet the criteria of what the client is looking for, I will participate. So our panel is across the country. It's made up of people across the country, but it's primarily made up of Central New Yorkers because this is the group that we go to when we're recruiting for focus groups or surveys or doing any kind of brand testing. So for any of you out there, if you're not on our panel and you want to get paid for some of these projects we've talked about, please be sure to sign up. And we do use Viewpoint regularly for a wide variety of research, especially when we're doing brand testing. It's a great way to get feedback quickly. Companies who want to test their brand, their image, their advertising campaign, it's an easy way for us to send out to the panel and get quick feedback. So you want customers to know you and to choose you, and that's what your brand says. There was a restaurant that had great food. It was a perfect location. They had a really friendly staff, but they couldn't figure out why they weren't doing well. Well, after some market research, apparently there was always a long wait between the courses. And that experience really reduced the times customers were returning, and it reduced their experience. So what is your customer experience like? And how do you really know? Sometimes what your customer says and what they do are very different. So beyond INTERCEPT, mystery shopping, and IDIs, we do shadow shopping and shop-alongs. That's where a trained professional will shop along with a customer to observe and ask questions as to what they are choosing and why they are choosing items. Ethnography is all about doing any study in a natural environment or a setting. So we're actually in their place that they are either shopping, or we also do it with website testing. So many times if an organization is designing a new website or before they launch it, you may want us to study the use and track their habits on the website to make sure that it's user-friendly and creates a positive experience for the customers. So these are just some additional ways to help grow in your business by using market research. So on a scale of 1 to 5, we hope that this has been helpful. We know it's a lot of information, but we know that a good way to grow your business is to know your business. And that market research is an excellent way to get to know more. It's not just about conducting the research. You need to analyze the data, understand what it means, and then make good decisions based on that data. So we really encourage you, if you do some market research, make sure that you're using it. And certainly there are ways that Vance just described that will allow you to do some of this on your own. And there's areas that if you want a professional research firm, certainly RMS is certainly here to help in any way that we can. So Marnie, I think we're going to turn it over to you and ask if there's any questions, and we hope that this was helpful.
That's wonderful. Yes, if people have questions, they should feel free to type them into the chat box right now. I do have a couple of questions I can get started with. First question is, and I don't know who to address it to, how often should a company be doing market research? Who'd like to answer that one?
Well, I'll start, and then I'll turn it over to Sandy. I think for the types of research that I talked about, a lot of it is really kind of ongoing. You should be regularly looking at your competition. You should regularly be looking at the market conditions. Take a look at that Center State CEO report. When it comes out every year. One resource that I didn't really talk about in the do-it-yourself category is, with competition, is you talk to your sales force and find out who they're going up against, and then, if you're coming across names that you don't recognize, you don't know much about, that's a good opportunity to go and find them through, find those companies through Reference USA or through, a book of lists or some source like that, to find out more. And then other types, really is kind of a case-by-case basis, So obviously, if you're looking to start a new product or a new business, you would be doing the early stages of that kind of on an ad hoc basis. Sandy, do you have anything to add about that?
Sure. And, basically we say anytime you really want to learn something or help answer a question. But we see, for example, the employee surveys are usually done regularly 1 to 2 years, because you want to give enough time to get the results, put some scenarios in place to actually see yourself moving the dial. Customer satisfaction surveys, we have some customers that do that on a quarterly basis as well as up to every 2 years. So again, the more time you can give yourself to get some feedback and put that into place and learn from that. Sometimes people say, well, we're really doing well, so, we don't need to do that. But sometimes that's the best time to do that, to find out why you're doing well, what's making them happy. And again, sometimes it's just that opportunity to give your customers a chance to give you some good feedback.
But you're saying that some of your customers are doing it quarterly and then longer.
Yeah.
How do you determine? Is that by industry it changes?
It's funny. So we do a lot in healthcare and patient satisfaction surveys. They actually have to do that. For some, we actually are doing them every month. For some of them, if you have a doctor's visit, you might get in the car by the time you leave and you've already got it on your phone. So some are actually doing it right after the experience. So it really depends. A lot of the different markets or industries have different either requirements or they have different needs. So that's where we sit down and say, what are you going to do with the research? If you're not going to do anything with it, then it really doesn't matter. But if you're going to be actually looking to make some decisions on that, you want data on a regular basis to help you grow.
Yeah, and to that point, I think what a lot of organizations find is that once they start doing research and they kind of get in the habit of making data-driven decisions, they kind of have an instinctive feel for when they need to do research. So it just becomes part of your process, and you'll know what you need to know and at what level, and how to approach it.
Okay. I have another question here. How how much would a focus group project cost?
I know, I went back and forth whether I should
An estimate.
Sure. So focus groups, and they really range. Again, we have the full service focus group facility. So sometimes companies come in and they just have us recruit people, and then they moderate and they do all of that. So then it would just be a setup cost and then a recruiting cost. And again, it depends on how strict those criteria and that screener is. But if you're having us come and you're having us recruit, do the moderating, write the moderator guide, do the analysis, and do the full report, it's usually averaging about $5,000 per group. And we always recommend that you do at least two, because you want some different, you want two different ones to be able to have some comparisons as well. But everyone does not go up. So one would be $5,000, and then if you did two, we can do that from like $8,000 to $9,000. Three would be, so your biggest setup is in that setup cost. The biggest costs are in the setup cost, and then we go from there.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Yeah.
And certainly everyone we customize, so there's no cookie cutter focus groups that we do.
Another question is, what are some things to look for, or perhaps questions to ask when you are looking to choose a research firm?
Oh.
So, Sandy, why don't you answer that one?
Well, every day when I get a phone call, that's, the first thing you want, my whole thing is, you want somebody that it feels like a good fit. You want somebody that has experience. You want somebody that's going to ask good questions. You want to get a sense of what kinds of results are you going to see. Some of our clients just want the raw data. They might have access to analysis. Some want a full report. So we really, that's the kind of thing that you want to ask. What kinds of experience do they have? What kind of team do they have? Who will be the person that will be working on that? And what will they get in a time frame? And so you want to see if that's going to fit in with what you're looking for as well.
I just add one piece of advice I would give, and it goes along with what Sandy just said, is I would be very wary of a research firm that didn't ask me a lot of questions, that didn't try to find out what my needs were. So I think the best conversation you could have with a research firm when you're looking to select one would be, the firm that asks you more questions than you ask them, because they're the ones that are going to be most attuned to what your needs are and will have kind of the best customized approach.
And that's really true. We had a situation where we had a company come in and they called about focus groups. And so after learning really what they were looking for, really determined that IDIs, in-depth interviews, would be a better way for them to get the information. So, you really want to work with somebody that's going to understand what you're looking for.
That makes sense. Let's see, how are we doing for time? All right, I have one more question. This is, how long does it usually take to complete a research project?
Well, the answer is really it depends, which is kind of a cop-out, but obviously some projects are going to be much more involved than others. I would say, as a general rule of thumb, I talked about the distinction between primary research, which again is research that is collected for the first time in this project, and secondary research, which has already been collected. Obviously, if you're dealing with a project that requires secondary research, it won't be as time consuming as one where you're doing primary research, and that will take a lot more time. And I'm sure Sandy will have some things to add about different time frames for these primary research projects.
Sure. For example, a quick pulse when we're going to go to the panel, and it's a very simple 5 to 7 questions. We can do that in a couple of weeks, and sometimes even shorter, because it may be something that a client wants a really quick feedback on. If it's a focus group, then we're going to have some time for setup. We need to develop the screener and write the moderator guide, and then actually set that up and then do the analysis and reporting. So usually about 6 to 8 weeks is what we estimate for focus groups. Surveys, it's the same thing, but what we always say is sometimes it really depends on how quick the client is to get back. So if we're going to do an online survey, we're going to write the survey. We write the survey based on the information that we get from the client, but then we rely on the client to give feedback. And so sometimes that's a really back and forth process, because we really want to make sure it's right before we go into the field, and then we test it. and then we leave it in the field for a couple of weeks, depending on, the responses that we're getting back, and then doing the analysis. So again, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks is an appropriate time for us.
Do you have one client, for example, that went above and beyond that, and it was?
Oh, so if it's a large phone survey, and some of our phone surveys are 800 complete, that is much longer. So those are usually 8 to 10 weeks, some into 12 weeks. If it's a full-scale feasibility study, so we're doing a competitive analysis, we're doing the demographic and trend analysis, we're doing a community survey, again, 10 to 12 weeks is not out of the
I think that's really interesting in this day and age of everything fast, and results quickly. Here, you have to be patient in order to get accurate results and information.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, what Sandy talked about, large-scale feasibility studies. Lots of times with those, you're actually kind of getting the information incrementally, and you might be changing your research approach as you go along. So the project overall might take months, but you might be getting data from it, every 4 weeks or something like that, and then extend the project or shorten it depending on what the findings are.
Great point. We call it stage gate. So we'll do the first stage. We'll say, we like, okay, we're going to stop, review what we have, fine tune, and sometimes we thought we were going to go left and then we go right. So we look at each of that, we meet with the client, and again, we really become their back office. We talk a lot about that. We become their back office and help them kind of mold into making good decisions based on the data.
Well, great information. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. I'd like to close this webinar by thanking both Vance and Sandy. A special thank you to Visual Technologies for providing technical support. We will be sending out a brief survey after the webinar, and you will also be receiving a link to the presentation in the next day. We hope today's content was informative, and to keep up to date on research and business news for the Central New York business region, continue to visit us at cnybj.com. Please enjoy the rest of your day.